the first match I wrote down here, Tomohiro Ishii versus Eddie Kingston, which actually was the main event of the pre-show. Fucking, oh my God, these dudes' chests.
I loved it. It was 90s All Japan, and I was here for it. I fucking loved it.
I think someone timed it. It was like 2.5 minutes of straight chops.
Yeah, I'll take it. There were certainly some small things on Eddie's part when it came to suplexes, either getting up for the suplex or throwing the suplex, where it just seemed a little gassed. But it's a match like this, like that might bother me in another match, but a match like this where two dudes are just slugging, I don't want things to be completely crisp. And like, I like the added, I can barely get him up, and like I'm still going to drop him where I can, because it is like I'm going, pardon the pun, I'm going all out here. I've just had everything taken out of me, but I'm still going to throw this, and I don't care where it lands or how it lands. I need to get an offense in here somewhere before I enjoy that part of it, to be honest with you. Now, if I'm watching a Ricochet versus Will Ospreay match and I see I don't want to call him Sandbag because I don't think that's what Eddie did at all.
No.
I see, suplexes aren't as clean because someone either mistimed it or they just didn't jump right. And it's just like, oh, well, what? This wasn't very good. Whereas this, I think it adds to. And that's one of the things I love about King's Road and 80s All Japan Wrestling. And Ishii and Kingston captured that for me. I fucking love this.
Yeah. I mean, that's the difference you get between, like you mentioned, an Ospreay Ricochet match, which you know it's an easier comparison to like an athletic display of Cirque du Soleil or something, but it's flippy shit, but it's athletically incredibly impressive, but it doesn't resemble closer to a fight, so it's more pretty impressive.
Yeah, agreed.
But this is more brutally impressive. So right. I even said it to you there, if everything was pretty and fluid, it wouldn't look realistic.
Right.
So absolutely, totally agree with you. This was everything it should have been and more. Absolutely perfect. As far as I'm concerned, are we doing ratings? We've never done a review of a show before.
No, I'll say I wouldn't throw.
No.
In the future when I'm going into a show knowing I'm watching it and giving a rating. But that wasn't even a concept to me when we were taking this in, to be honest with you. And I think if I were to have to give them a fair rating, I would have to watch them back on TV as well. And we were actually trying to get someone, schedule didn't work out for someone who was watching the pay-per-view to be on with us. That way there was that different vantage point. And I think if I'm going to give a proper grade to a match, if I were already there live, I'd have to see it back on TV as well. But this was a match that, I mean, it was an easy A for me. Especially being on the pre-show, low expectations. And they ramped it up. They didn't just stay clobbering each other. They ramped it up, came back down, and then you almost forgot about the chops because they started throwing chops again, and then like, oh shit, that's right, those are bombs. I will say though, however, because you recognize it, I think all of our ears recognized it.
Yeah, the miking.
Yes.
There was a turnbuckle, the bottom. I say the bottom. If you're looking from the hard cam, it is the one on the right. That turnbuckle camera had a microphone on it where anytime they were in that corner, it was mic'd in the arena. And it was very weird. It was very distracting.
It was. And like I thought it worked brilliantly for things like this, which this might be the whole premise of why they did it, was for the chops. Which I don't think their chops need to be mic'd in the first place.
No.
But yeah, then we would start getting like small cells that were like, and it would like sound like, Like, what the fuck was that?
Or you'd get Moxley in the corner being like,
yeah.
And then you'd be hearing it in your left ear, like, what the hell?
Right. It was very odd.
Yeah, it was very strange. But I you said like almost you forget the chops. For me, it was a little different. Like, because they did such a prolonged and brutal like chop display, it almost like I kind of get a thing where like I get why there was a concerted effort in older wrestling cards where if you had designated spots like that, you wouldn't use it throughout other matches. You would designate a card where certain things were special to certain matches in certain ways, and you wouldn't use it elsewhere to make it special. Because anytime anyone else did chops, it fell flat as fuck to me.
Yeah, agreed.
Because everyone else, almost every other match, someone was doing chops.
And I'm sorry, I should clarify my point. I meant in the match when they were changing gears and they started like hitting each other in the face, throwing like forearms and doing moves. I kind of forgot about the chops, and then they started. Ishii and Kingston started throwing the chops again. You're like, oh god, that's right. Their chests are beaten to hell.
Oh, yeah. I knew what you meant. I know what you meant.
Okay, I'm right with you though, 100%.
Yeah. I don't think anyone else on that show should have been throwing a single fucking chop, because every time they did, I immediately went to Kingston and Ishii did it better, and these guys that are doing it in the match, whatever I was watching in that moment, are not as good at doing those chops.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why like Flair was so synonymous with chops, is because, well, his chops weren't the best, but whenever he was on the card, no one else did them.
Right.
And
I don't think a lot of people realize, and I'm sure they don't, and you may not. There's so many different varieties of a chop. Like Flair's chop, when he chops, he cups his hand slightly. That way, when it lands on the skin, it makes that popping noise and slaps. And a lot of people think that chop is like, I'm just going to open up my hand and 5-star you. No, that'll make a thud.
Yeah.
So you do still have to have flexibility in your hands so that when it hits, your palm like flexes into it. But the chop, the Japanese style chops that Ishii and Kingston throw are where you're coming across. You do that same thing with your hand, but when you go your entire forearm, you're throwing a forearm with it, and you're not like other chops you hit and you bounce off. These you are pressing all the way down. You're not popping off. You are going through them. And so these were like, it's like taking forearm strikes and chops at the same time, and they're vicious. Yeah. So I assure you guys, when you see like Ric Flair throwing a shitload of chops, like, yeah, he'll get great sound on his chops, but he's not trying to make he's not trying to break blood vessels like Walter or Gunther.
Yeah.
But when the Japanese chops, like those are going to fuck you.
The knife edge chop versus a fucking,
yeah.
I closed my fist. I don't know why that was dumb.
I was about to say
that's just
a knife edge chop to a knife edge stab.
Yeah, just a knife. That's just a literal knife.
Right.
Ric Flair, just the final match.
Who had the better chop, Flair or Michael Myers?
Jason. Yeah.
Right.
Shout out to the Santa mask back there.
Oh, is that the Jason Santa?
Yeah.
Or is that Michael Myers Santa? What's a Jason Santa?
Yeah.
Nice.
And then had the sign underneath it says "Have a killer day."
That's awesome. I have a shirt that's like one of those all around prints. I made it myself. I just uploaded a picture that I found, and it's Michael Myers with a Christmas hat on, like with the death stare. So
nice.
I love Halloween and Christmas, so when they come together, big fan. Big fan.
Yeah.